And now for our next news special report.
Tonight, a storm brews in Washington. President Biden's whopping $105 billion foreign aid package has ignited a firestorm among top Republican leaders. Senator Tom Cotton vows it's dead on arrival, slamming the door on what he labels a cash infusion for terrorists. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Senator Ted Cruz pulls no punches, exposing a staggering cash flow to Iran, known patrons of Hamas. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the GOP's response fiercer. You can't afford to miss this special report, as it tears the lid off the administration's foreign dealings that could put our republic and allies at risk. And stay with us until the end for a final thought that promises to challenge everything you know about the current state of our national security. The halls of Washington are echoing with outrage and disbelief after President Joe Biden announced a staggering $105 billion foreign aid package, a move that has drawn the ire of prominent Republican senators. Among the most vocal are Tom Cotton of Arkansas and Ted Cruz of Texas, who argue that this isn't just a misuse of hard-earned tax dollars, but a dangerous game that could inadvertently fuel international terrorism. Biden's plan, detailed in a national address, proposes funneling billions, including a contentious $3.5 billion to Gaza and a whopping $60 billion to Ukraine. While the president labels this a vital support mechanism for allies, critics are questioning the allocations, especially since much of it seems destined for regions with questionable ties to terror outfits like Hamas. Senator Cotton, a close ally of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, didn't mince any words in his response. He said, quote, President Biden's slush fund proposal is dead on arrival, just like his budgets. He declared, slamming the door on any misconceptions about the bill's survival. Cotton is especially irate about the billions earmarked for Gaza, which he starkly describes as a resupply line for Hamas terrorists. The aid package, though touted as a lifeline for allies, raises eyebrows with its disproportionate allocations. While Ukraine would receive the lion's share, Israel's allocated $14 billion, ostensibly to sharpen Israel's military edge and signal to Iran that U.S. stands firm with Israel. But it's the aid funneled toward potential hotbeds of terrorism that has senators up in arms. And Cotton isn't alone in his skepticism. Senator Cruz took the criticism up a notch, linking the Biden administration's policy with the direct empowerment of terrorism. In a no-holds-barred conversation with Maria Bartiromo, Cruz pointed an accusing finger at the Biden regime for facilitating nearly $100 billion to flow into Iran over the last 2.5 years. This financial influx, Cruz argues, directly empowers Hamas, a known terrorist entity, and by extension endangers both American and Israeli lives. Watch.
Let me get your take from a policy perspective, what you can do, what you and your colleagues can do in the face of this bloodshed.
Well, this attack is the worst attack on Israel in 50 years. This is what happened on October 7th. In the early mornings of October 7th is the single largest mass murder of Jews in a day since the Holocaust. And Israel right now is quite rightly responding, and they are responding. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made clear that his objective is to utterly eradicate Hamas. These terrorists, they targeted civilians. They went from home to home to home, going after civilians, deliberately murdering the elderly, murdering women, murdering children. They would murder entire families simply because they were Jewish. They violently raped women and young girls, publicly parading them in the street. They murdered and decapitated and burned alive toddlers and infants. This is horrific, and it is evil what Hamas terrorists have done. Now, going forward, there are several steps for U.S. policy. Number one, we need to cut off the funding that has enabled this attack to happen. And what is so infuriating is that over the last 2.5 years, Joe Biden and the Biden administration have flowed nearly $100 billion to Iran. Understand, Hamas is a proxy for Iran. Without Iran, there would be no Hamas. And the Wall Street Journal has reported that this attack was planned by Iran, was funded by Iran, was directed by Iran, And yet the Biden administration continues to allow billions and billions of dollars to flow to the Ayatollah to be used to murder Israelis and to murder Americans.
That is exactly right, Senator.
The situation gets murkier when Secretary of State Antony Blinken, a key player in this geopolitical saga, openly acknowledges that Iran has a history of channeling funds to support terrorism. Despite this admission, the Biden administration endorsed a substantial financial package for Iran, amplifying GOP concerns about indirect U.S. sponsorship of terrorism. Maria Bartiromo, sharing these concerns, highlighted the presence of Iranian sympathizers within the Biden administration, particularly Rob Malley, Biden's chief negotiator in the Iran nuclear talks. This infiltration, she contends, exacerbates the risk, enabling policies that might indirectly fund and empower terrorists. And it's not just about who gets the money. It's also about who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. Cruz revealed a worrying national security scandal involving Malley and alleged Iranian operatives within the administration. Such revelations, if accurate, signify a profound threat to American-Israeli security, essentially placing foxes in charge of the henhouse. Watch.
Right now, we have Iranian sympathizers working within the Biden administration. And that is why I started asking you, what can you do about it? Because these atrocities are continuing. And we have Robert Malley, apparently Biden's chief negotiator in the Iran nuclear talks. We have others that are still working in the administration that have been leading this effort to get the United States back into an Iran deal, leading this effort to, in fact, lower the sanctions, enabling Iran to generate billions in revenue. And what are they doing with the money? They are empowering these terrorists.
Well, and what you just mentioned with Rob Malley remains one of the greatest national security scandals in our nation's history. So Rob Malley was Joe Biden's chief negotiator for Iran. He's an incredible Iran sympathizer. He is an advocate, a passionate advocate for the disastrous Obama-Iran nuclear deal. But he also has extraordinarily bad judgment. He's been fired. He's had his security clearances stripped, which I want you to pause and think, just how bad does his conduct have to be to have his security clearances pulled by this ideological and radical White House? But we now know also that, among other things, 3 of Rob Malley's top advisors, his inner circle, that he relied on, were Iranian operatives. They were recruited by the government of Iran. They were directed by the Iranian foreign minister. They reported to the Iranian foreign minister. We have their emails now in which they discuss. One of them discusses with the foreign minister that his loyalties are with the government of Iran, and he is there to do whatever they direct, including making the message from within the federal government that there's nothing wrong with Iran having a nuclear stockpile. You literally had 3 Iranian spies working in senior positions directly around the U.S. government. One of them, as far as we know, remains a chief of staff in the Department of Defense to this day with access to classified documents. And yet the corporate media cannot be brought to mention that 3 Iranian spies were brought into senior levels of government with access to classified materials while working directly for Iran, the same Iran that just murdered 31 Americans and 1,400 Israelis, the same Iran directed by an Ayatollah who regularly leads mobs chanting death to America and death to Israel.
The plot thickens with Biden's nominee for ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew. Cruz is appalled, labeling Lew a terrible choice due to his prior involvement in the Obama-Iran nuclear deal, which previously funneled over $100 billion to Iran. All this financial wrangling occurs against the backdrop of Biden's push for a massive $100 billion supplementary request intended for defense assistance to Israel and Ukraine, among other expenses. Cruz criticizes this as a cynical ploy leveraging bipartisan support for Israel to smuggle in unrelated agendas. He's calling for a clean, straightforward legislation that directly supports Israel's military needs, not a bill muddled with extraneous issues. Here's more.
Your take on what happens with Jack Lew. Last week, your committee heard the hearing of the former Treasury Secretary under President Obama. He wants to be the next ambassador to Israel. Is it going to pass?
Well, I don't know. I think he's a terrible choice. I think you will see Republicans voting against him. The question is, does every Democrat vote party line? And they might. Jack Lew was the Treasury Secretary under Barack Obama. He was one of the critical point people for negotiating and implementing the Obama-Iran nuclear deal. Jack Lew played a critical point in flowing over $100 billion to Iran. That was catastrophically stupid then. It hurt American interest. It cost American lives. And now Joe Biden has taken the appeasement of Barack Obama towards Iran, has taken it to another level, and he wants to put as the point person for the administration in Israel someone who has funded in a very real way the death squads that are attacking Israel. I think that's a mistake. In ordinary times, I think there'd be a reasonable chance that some Democrats would say, look, this is a bad choice, and would vote no. Right now, the White House is saying, well, if you support Israel, you got to give us an ambassador there. I think it'd be great to have an ambassador there. It'd be even better to have an ambassador there who isn't responsible for funding the theocratic lunatics who are murdering your citizens, and to have an ambassador there who hasn't implemented policies for years that undermine the state of Israel. We need to support Israel, not undermine Israel and fund their enemies.
All right. Real quick.
And before we dive deeper, let's pause for a critical message that's equally about safeguarding your well-being. Just as our nation needs robust defense, your body needs strong support, especially when it comes to managing weight. Recent studies show that regularly stepping on a scale can dramatically improve weight loss efforts by keeping goals front and center. And now, many folks are turbocharging their journey with natural supplements. I have discovered a remarkable solution that harnesses the Earth's bounty to help manage weight, curb cravings, and boost metabolism. Plus, for this month only, you can save 51% on your order. Don't miss out. Visit trimwithgary.com or click below for this limited time offer. Now back to the high-stakes drama unfolding in Washington. Cotton's promise that the proposal would be blocked isn't just political posturing. It's a commitment to craft a funding bill that, in his words, protects America's and their interests. This isn't mere fiscal responsibility. It's about ensuring that American dollars don't inadvertently fuel the very threats the nation combats. But where does Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer stand amidst this turmoil? Well, he's pushing for swift action, arguing this legislation is too important to wait. His call for bipartisan support, however, seems to fall on deaf ears as GOP senators, including McConnell, demand a more tailored approach that, quote, meets the demonstrated needs of our allies without opening the door to misuse. The tug of war isn't merely about dollars and cents. It's about national security and the sanctity of human life. Both Cruz and Cotton argue that the indirect funding of terrorism through these allocations could have a catastrophic domino effect, imperiling American and Israeli lives and ultimately global security. In this intricate web of politics, finance, and security, one thing stands firm. The decisions made in Washington's corridors have real-world consequences, often paid in human lives. When our leaders choose to funnel billions into regions rife with terrorism and corruption, they must acknowledge the potential backlash against American and global security. Senators Cotton and Cruz's staunch opposition isn't just fiscal prudence, it's a clarion call to safeguard American interests and lives. As citizens, we must heed this call, holding our elected officials accountable for their actions and demanding transparency in every transaction made in our name, because ultimately the price of negligence is one we cannot afford to pay. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now keep up your quest for truth with this next news report. And if you found our channel enlightening, join the millions who agree with you. Tap subscribe. Thank you for watching the Next News Network.